Well, g'day everyone. It's the Two Ordinary Cops. We are back again, and mate, Damo, I'm going to hand it over to you, mate. But we've got a pretty exciting night tonight. What do you reckon?
Yeah, mate. No, it's good. It's been in the pipeline for a little while. It's certainly been in the back of my mind, and I was surprised to know it was in the back of our guest mind as well. So that's good to know. A lot of people around the country would know about the shooting of Kumanjai Walker in 2019 in Yuendamu community in the Northern Territory, and the subsequent process that went on after that, involving Constable Zach Rolfe, who was stationed at Alice Springs at the time, who I crossed paths with but didn't realise it. But yeah, did so back in probably 2016, 2017. So tonight we have Zach Rolfe. How are you, mate?
Going good, thanks, boys. How you guys?
Good,
Yeah,
good, mate. No,
pretty
it's
good.
good.
That's good. That's good.
Thanks for coming along. So what we're going to have to do, because geez, mate, we could talk for a week. So
Yeah, 100%.
I think the plan is we're going to talk over 3 weeks, and we've chatted back and forth beforehand, and I think the story's it's known. I don't think it's well known. Um, it's certainly not known with the intricacies of those involved, especially yourself. So, mate, it's your show tonight. I think tonight the plan will be that we talk about what happened, and just basically just Zach Rolfe, the bloke who joined the NT Police and went from there, and sort of your background, and then we might have a couple of episodes, and in the next few we might talk about what happened afterwards. But it's your show, Zach. So you want to kick it off?
Yeah, for sure. We'll get through the childhood stuff because it's childhood stuff is fairly boring to me, probably boring to everyone else. But I grew up in Canberra. I got two older brothers. Mum and dad. Mum was a lawyer. Dad was a businessman in the car dealerships. They did a lot of charity work as well. But I grew up in Canberra. Good childhood. Everything was good to go. Never wanted for anything. I went to Canberra Grammar School, which is a private school down there. Didn't. I was like a regular young kid. Like the classroom was not for me. So my main focus in school was just sport, and living for the weekend. Gone to high school, started boxing, and started playing rugby union, and then started boxing when I was 12. And basically that was me until 18 in the Arvos. If I was either, winter was mixed between footy and boxing, and then some was just boxing. And then that was me. That was my childhood, basically. Just good times, but looking for, I guess, my own hardships, which was the only hardships really I had was kind of just regular kid stuff, and then whatever I could find for myself. But that was me. I was trying to find situations to be uncomfortable in a very comfortable setting, I guess. I didn't have the rough childhood that a lot of people do have. But then left school, finished year 12, left school. I had no intentions of joining or going to uni at all. But I'd always known that at some point that I wanted to be a cop. That was kind of forever that was my trajectory for as long as I can remember. And I think it just came from the standard stuff, not liking seeing people get hurt or that couldn't protect themselves and wanted to protect those that needed protection. That's why I wanted to join the cops. But I knew that when I left school, especially with my upbringing, that there's no way that I would be ready to be a police officer at 18 or 19. I couldn't see myself at all giving, rocking up to a DV you've got a couple of actual adults, 40, 50 years old, and me trying to tell them what to do. I just couldn't see it happening. And maybe some cops can do that and they are better at that than I would have been, but I knew that I wouldn't have been ready for that situation. So rather than going to uni, because I never wanted to pick up a book again in my life after school, I joined the army. So left school, and I think the army for me, unlike a lot of people that saw it as a kind of a forever thing, a passion. And again, amazing for the boys and for the soldiers, but for me, it really was not a stepping stone, but a short-term thing for me to grow up. And if I could do some good or do some soldiering in the meantime, then that's a bonus. But I joined the infantry because I figured if I was going to join the army, I may as well be on the ground in the fight if I could be. joined the infantry the year after school and posted up to Townsville after going through Kapuka and Singleton infantry basic training. I found, again, it's fairly boring. My army career is basically the same as, like we've talked before, and it's basically the same as, I would say, 99% of infantry boys' careers. I found Kapuka boring for 80 days. I found Singleton good to go. For that's another 3 months, but that's just all infantry training with the boys that are more similar minded. It's more focused on the tactics and the training for that. And then again, posting up to Townsville, I was on base for basically 4 years training and looking busy until we got our deployment over to Afghan. And the only really thing that happened in that time, military related, was in 2012. My mate from school, Rob Pope, got killed over in Afghan in an insider attack with 2 of the other boys. That was in 2012. I guess that was a massive thing that kind of really pushed me forward and I guess maybe affected my trajectory, especially with the trip to Afghan when we got over there. But again, my Afghan trip was a force protection trip. So our main goal over there was just to protect the mentors that were, their job was to build up the Afghan National Army to provide themselves with the capability so when we left, they could handle themselves. Obviously failed, but at the time our job was to provide them protection. The main threat was insider threats. So yeah, apart from the trip, which was fairly standard, mostly boring, but the rest of because I was in for 5 years, but the rest of the 4 years was just training, training for a game. Afghan was a 3-week rotation that we were on. 1 week was base protection. So it's just standing in a guard tower looking at the desert for 8 hours, and then you have an 8-hour break. And we got to the point where it was 8 hours on, 8 hours off. So that was a shithouse week. The next week was QRF. We just sit in a room and just wait to react if anything needed to be reacted to. And the third week was the actual force protection week where you go out on the ground with the mentors and I guess just protect them. That was me. Yeah. Summarised. 25 years.
Wow.
24 years. 24 years.
24 years, yeah, right. 5 years in 7 minutes and 55 seconds. Well done.
It's how easy you can do it.
Yeah.
Mate, so obviously, sorry, Shilty, you go.
Yeah, mate, I've just got a couple of things you mentioned there, actually. So, you said you're getting yourself in situations. I mean, I've always considered myself a bit of an adrenaline junkie. Do you think it was something more like that? Or, I loved action, anything that could, like my mum was always freaked out all the time because she was sure I'd die young, just from, the kind of shit I threw myself into. So, do you reckon like that's what you're talking about, or just like situations where I don't know you wanted something to happen? Or
I think it was a bit like that for sure. And it's not an all-time thing. I'm kind of like strange in the fact that some like a little bit of the time I'm down for like wild adrenaline rushes, like doing all the wild clearing buildings, blowing things up, like mountain biking down slopes and like boxing and all that kind of stuff. But the rest of the time I'm just happy to be a bit of a couch potato and read my books and hang out with my missus and the dogs kind of thing. But I think it was a bit of the adrenaline, but I also think I knew fairly young, and I'm not sure where it came, whether it was intrinsically or it was learned from like my family or maybe just from books I was reading or something like that. But I think I knew fairly early on that if I wasn't in an uncomfortable situation, my growth as a person was slower than it would have been. Like I guess with everything, you need to put yourself in uncomfortable situations to grow. Yeah. And I think early on, when I was a kid, even I had that really internal drive to grow and to push myself forward. And I wasn't, I guess I wasn't as accurate in my like trajectory of where I wanted to go. So it was more like anything uncomfortable. If anything scared me, I wanted to do it. So with boxing, for example, I was competitive in boxing, but I I think it was more so not, and I love boxing. I loved it. Got good enough in it that I could really find my like flow state, I guess, in it when I was in the ring and when I was fit. But I stopped competing when I stopped being afraid of the crowd.
Yeah.
So when I was like up in the ring in front of the crowd, and obviously the first few fights, I was like, some people aren't, but most people are. You're so nervous that your fitness goes down like to 1/5 or a quarter of what it was. So you're tired after like no time at all. But it's because of your nerves you got built up. So as soon as I was no longer scared of the crowd, that I was completely comfortable to walk into that ring and, risk getting my head kicked in, getting embarrassed, all that kind of stuff. And I didn't care about the crowd. I really stopped competing after that. I had no more drive.
Yeah.
So I think it was, again, I love the adrenaline, but I also was really chasing that that forward progression as a person. And I knew that I had to be uncomfortable for that to happen.
Yeah.
I think that was it.
Yeah.
But that makes sense. I mean, basically, I mean, people grow and people become better at things by what they experience.
Yeah.
And so I can
But
really.
I think it's looking back now, and this is definitely not what I knew at the time, but looking back now, one of the things that I think has helped me out through this whole process was that it's nearly like voluntary discomfort or voluntary suffering that I've done since that I was so young. It really prepared me for like involuntary suffering when it came later. I think so. That was one of the really things that did help me out. Just the choosing to do stuff that I didn't really want to do, but I wanted, like, at the same time you kind of do it because you're scared and you should do it. So I think it really helped me out later in life going through this stuff.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, Damo, what do you reckon?
Yeah, so I can relate to it. Same thing. Easy upbringing, no dramas. I didn't really have. I didn't have challenges. I played rugby, but it was fun. It was good. There was pressure there, but that's fine. But I think what happened to me, I didn't know what I wanted to do after school. I did nursing for a while, believe it or not. I think I found out that I was good in conflict when I was at uni doing security work and stuff like that. Well, I went to the army for a bit myself. I was at Duntroon on 18 months, but I was way too young. And I should have if I wanted to do that, I should have gone to Kapuka. I shouldn't have gone to Duntroon. I was 19 as a staff cadet at Duntroon, so I was too young.
Yeah.
Leadership. I was too immature. I'd had time out on the street, and that was fun. So all of a sudden, it was like, oh shit, I just want to have a party with the boys. I don't have to do this. So
yeah.
Anyway, what my inspiration? I never thought about policing until I'd done civil military liaison work at Duntroon, where it wasn't necessarily there's the enemy, fight them. It was no, you've actually got to think, and you're not allowed to kill. It's not about that straight away. It's solving the problem, and there's a very high threat level there. So we had lethal means, but we had to negotiate things, and I love that. I found that a really good challenge. And then someone had mentioned, well, this is the policing side of stuff, and I sort of this is not about me, but long story short, I thought about the AFP, thought about Queensland Police, got talked out. AFP was going to be general duties in Canberra, which didn't interest me. Queensland Police, I was keen. I had an application in. It was on track, and then I got sort of talked out of it and told, no, don't join Queensland, join somewhere else, or join the NT or WA, so I picked the NT. And that's how I ended up there. So how did you end up in the Northern Territory Police?
Yeah.
Well, so I left the army, and I'd left the army with, I was 24 years old. I'd just come back from Afghan. So even though it wasn't a wild trip, we'd actually been working for the last 7 months. Got back to the battalion, and I remember one of the, I went up to recon platoon after that because I'd already been qualled up. And it's just a better environment generally. Like, you're in a specialized little unit. There's less of you. You've got a bit more top cover. But we had a speech from the new bosses of the battalion, and basically, I remember the speech was something like, for the next 12 months, like, our focus in battalion isn't going to be soldiering or how well of a soldier you are. It's going to be dress and bearing. And I just went, like, again, I wasn't loving base life already. There was no more deployments on the horizon. And I decided to get out there. And then I think a lot of the boys from the 2 platoons that went over, I think nearly half of the guys, at least who had done their contracts, got out in the next couple of months. So I got out, but I jumped ship with no ship to jump to. So I left Townsville back down to Canberra. So I had no quals. You come out of the army and you've got no qualifications. You've done infantry and you've dug holes for 5 years, and now and filled them in. So now you realise that you don't have much of a resume, and it's probably different now. But at the time, you don't think you've got much going for you. So I actually was still thinking maybe private military overseas, private military contracting. So I went over to America and did some training over there with a company for a bit over a month. And that was just more of the high level tactical training in Arkansas. And that was a good time. That was awesome. Like, one, it was awesome because it was an adult learning environment, but it was also learning good skills, and you're a better human at the end of each day because, again, you'd done that good training in that uncomfortable situation, but it was just the improvements you had were next level. After that, I was still 24, and it was easier to get into that PMC world if you're 25, and every day seemed like forever back then. So I went back to Canberra. I did a couple odd jobs while I decided that maybe it's time just to get a real career and start moving forward in the proper direction, like a kind of like more long-term direction, and do the policing that I was always planning to do. So I applied to Queensland. I didn't do New South Wales just because the training process there. I think at the time you lost money or you didn't get paid, or it was just different. So I applied Queensland, AFP, Vic. The processes were a lot longer. So a little bit through the process, I applied to NT. Kind of just like staying on the East Coast a little bit mainly. They were my priorities because that's what I knew.
Yep.
And then lastly, I applied to the NT, but partway through, Queensland got back to me and they said that my application had been blocked for 10 years because I hadn't disclosed that I'd had a ticket for a fight that I got in. So you had to disclose everything you had for 5 years. 4 years and 11 months before my app, I'd had a ticket for a fight, and I had completely forgot about it because, as a young man, or even especially a young man in the army in Townsville, like one ticket from a cop for a fight is very unmemorable in the scheme of things. So I forgot to do. If I did disclose it, it wouldn't have been an issue, but I didn't let them know.
Yeah.
So I figured because the applications were similar, and there was a difference in maybe professionalism between the applications. I figured that if I'd been blocked from Queensland, it would be similar for AFP and Vic, and there was no one really to call, but for NT that I could call directly to the recruitment people. I don't know who I got onto, but I got onto someone in recruitment in the NT because I figured I was done for the other states. I called the NT, let them know that I forgot to let them know about a ticket that I had, and they asked about what happened. And it was basically one of the boys was getting like the shit kicked out of him by a group of guys down by the Strand while we were all out drinking. So one of the other guys had come to get a crew, and I was drunk, and I jumped in and got in a big fight and got my head kicked in for a little bit, and then ended up somehow getting on top and winning the fight, but obviously got arrested for it. But the guy that was getting beat up, he ended up getting med discharged from the army for he was blind in one eye, he had a brain bleed from that beating.
Shit.
So it all turned out good. In fact, the army was really happy with what I'd done and kind of like, not celebrated, but like commended me for it. Like, they really liked that, protecting your mates at that time. They had that attitude that if your mate's in hospital, you should be next to him, kind of thing.
Yep.
So I called up NT and gave them an explanation, and I just remember still clear as day, the guy laughed on the end of the phone, was like, you'll fit in right here, you'll fit in like here, easy mate. And he's like, you're in. And basically a few weeks after that, I was up in Darwin at our police school.
Wow.
It was quick.
Yeah,
so that's how I ended up in the NT.
Yeah, wow. So what squad were you?
I want to say, my memory is not good. Like, it's pretty good, but if I don't like see a need to remember something, I just darted up it. I feel like I was 129.
Yeah, right. Yep.
But everyone on my squad right now will probably like, if they're listening to this, like,
Probably screaming at you.
You're an idiot, mate. I don't know. 129 feels right right now.
It's funny, going through the college, one thing I said, like coming, it'd been a couple of years, 4 years since I'd been at Duntroon. I'd gone back into that military style training environment, give or take. And I remember for 6 months. Obviously, you know, there were challenges with a lot of academia and stuff like that. But I remember waiting for a bomb to drop for 6 months that never dropped. I thought, we're going to get smashed. There's no way that they're going to tolerate this shit. We're going to get smashed. They're going to have us doing bloody PT up and down the hills and all this stuff. And it never came. But what was your experience there coming from the military?
Yeah, similar. I was confused. Hey, I loved it because, again, coming from like the army life where Kapuka and Singo are basically 24/7. You know, in Kapuka, you're supposed to go to bed at 10 p.m. and up at 6 a.m., but still, like, you're under control for that 24-hour period. Even in the full time, you know, you don't really know when knockoff is. You generally get to the end of the day, and then that's when the tasks from earlier in the day come up, and you've got to stay late to do the tasks because you've just been waiting around all day. So there's never clear going home times and stuff like that. So when I got to police school and realised, like, staff were being nice to us and the students were being nice to each other, it was unreal to me. I never really worked with, like, just a thing, like, I never worked in that environment because the army at that point, the general infantry was, I think it hadn't changed to allowing, like, women in yet.
Yeah.
So it was just a completely different environment. But it was like 7 or 8 a.m. till 4 p.m. still get paid to do PT and get, like, brekkie and lunch. I loved it. And yeah, it was a lot of death by PowerPoint. It was a lot of death by PowerPoint, but I could kind of, like, I don't know, my brain just was able to absorb the legislation fairly well, and I wasn't too stressed about it. So I really had a good time. And just, like, in Darwin, knocking off every Arvo and just being able to swim laps in that pool, it was just nice. I didn't live on base either, so it was just kind of fortuitous. My mate, one of my real, like, best mates from the army, he had joined Border Force around the same time, and he was doing his training actually in Darwin. It was about 6 months as well. So we both lived off down by near Casuarina Beach. So every day, like, I'd wake up early, run my dogs on the beach, come to police school, do PT, kind of drool on myself through legislation presentations all day, and then, you know, swim and go back to the beach. It was nice.
It's yeah. It's interesting. Yeah, like so obviously, I mean, yeah, the death by PowerPoint and all that sort of stuff. Going through the college and all that sort of thing. What was the camaraderie like, say, compared to the army? Like with your squad and all that sort of thing? Do you think it was the same or different?
I think the main difference was that in the army, there was still so much forced hardship that you could really more quickly find out who's who. So I think you only really find out who someone is, or confirm who someone is, not that who they're pretending to be, through that hardship. So in the army, there's just a lot of, like, physical hardship. You're forced to do a lot of exercises where you're all tired, you're hungry, you're wet, you're cold, and you really do see quickly who each other are, and you can then bond with the people that you who are loyal and who you do choose to have in your crew. Whereas I think in the police, especially in my squad, they'd recently taken out a couple of things, like, for example, even the red man suit, which I think maybe just the squad before us had it. Even stuff like that, there was a step back from that. So the guys and girls on the squad were generally pretty good. There was a couple clicks and stuff, but I don't think there probably wasn't enough forced hardship to really see who was who. And I think that forced hardship not being there was probably it's probably a loss. Yeah. And probably what the previous squads, I think, had a lot more of. And I think if you see it, like, you guys and the previous squads, especially before mine, so mine was made to 2016, and maybe, look, there might have been a few squads beforehand who had the same issue. But I think the earlier squads where there does seem to be a bit more forced hardship. That, I think, that brings people together for multiple reasons. One, you find out who people are, but if you have, like, imagine if you're, like, instructors become sort of nearly the enemy, everyone bonds against it. It's like created, and they're doing it. It's a created thing, but it does force that bond. We still have some really awesome mates and stuff in the squad and stuff, but I just think that's a bit of a loss that should come back, probably.
It's funny that you mentioned the red man suit, because that was a huge for those following along at home. A red man suit is basically a person who's going to be a fender dressed up basically in a big red set of pads that go all over their body. And we had a particular instructor who was a bit of a weapon and a bit of a legend around the police force and still is well known. And he basically said, when that red man suit's on, you guys do exactly what you need to do to get me down, but good luck. And it was worst case scenario physicality, and it was really good because it toughened you up. It said, just because you got that suit that you think's bulletproof of blue that you're wearing, there are people out here who are going to hit you, and they're going to hit you hard, and you need to be able to defend yourself. And I thought that was excellent. We were squad 91, so we were 2007. I think what you were 20. Did you go through 2016?
I was 2016, but I think you're 100% right because there's two things. Because like one, you don't want the first time you're getting punched in the face to be when it matters out on the street.
Yeah.
But two, I think it's one of the really good things with boxing or BJJ or wrestling or any of the martial arts where you can spar. And it's not even so much the techniques and stuff, but it's when you can practice going 100% in training and be like, this is my heart rate, super, super high. This is how I react in this situation. This is how I am when I'm going 100%, because you can improve. And if you find out that you are lacking when you're in that like nearly like red zone state, then you can improve it. So even if you don't use the techniques and stuff from whatever martial art you're doing, or just from like training with the red man suit, if you get comfortable going 100% and being able to control your psychology when your physiology has gone wild, so it's like double-edged benefits. Not just the getting punched in the face, but I still think you should definitely get punched in the face before you're going to get out on the street when a lot worse can happen to you.
Well, that's one thing a good mate of mine says. Andy, we'll have to get him on. It's like, who's here, who has been hit, who's played contact sport, who's done this? Because I know a lot of people, when they get on the road's real. It's gritty. It's tough. The Northern Territory is a wild show, as you well know.
Yeah.
So when you get out there, it's not if, it's when, and how many times you get assaulted and how badly that assault is, and whether you basically at the ultimate end of the day live to fight another day.
Yeah.
And you need to be able to go, yep, I've been hit, but I'm still here. I'm still in the fight, and I'm still going to win.
Exactly.
And I think we got that a bit. I'm not saying it was the toughest training that anyone's ever done, but it was good. It was tough. We had some tough PT. We had some tough defensive tactics training, and I think that's
100%. And our instructors, they wanted that. They wanted to be able to give us that for sure. So it wasn't the instructors' fault at all, because they were like chomping at the bit to be able to give us that level of training. But different times, you get younger kids, more my age, even younger, coming in, and they kind of force the culture change a little bit. You start bringing in different people. So it was definitely not our instructors' fault. They wanted to give us that higher level training, which they knew was beneficial. I remember at one point we had some officers from the army and in the recruit squad. And at one point, one of the best instructors we had, he gave one of the boys a dressing down for just rocking up to the academy without ironing his shirt. He gave him a little bit of a spray, sent him back to his little unit on base to iron his shirt and come back. He came back, no issues. So he got a little yell, went and fixed the issue, came back. That's it. No, there was no administration issues, no ongoing punishment. Like the justice was quick, it was served, and it was over. But one of the other recruits in our squad made a complaint that, in the new scheme of how you give feedback, you should break someone down, and then once they've fixed it, you should build them up. So because this instructor hadn't come, once this guy come back on, well done, that iron shirt is amazing. That instructor then got in trouble, and he was just like, he was one of the best we had, and he was just like, it's not worth it. If I'm getting complaints, you're in a unit where you shouldn't really get complaints. On the road you can get complaints, but he's like, see you never, because he was there by choice. He's kind of had his separate job on the road and in the negotiating squad, and he would come in and just give us these gems of wisdom, and then we lost that as well. So it was, it's a lot. It's not the instructor's fault. A lot of it's our fault, and then whoever's making the final decisions up top as well. So it's like a top down and bottom up, and then the middle is just we know what's right, but we can't get there.
Yeah, mate. Yeah. One thing, I mean, you're probably well aware of it, but our we kind of went through a transition, and we were fighting against that. Where they wanted to go easy on us. They'd actually brought in a civilian to train us. So we didn't have as many injuries and all that sort of thing. And they were against, the red man suit and all that sort of thing. We fought against it a fair bit, and there was quite a lot of controversy throughout that. However, they did try and make it softer on us, but we never allowed it. But it was that transition, I think, in our area I agree with you. You lose. That camaraderie. You also lose. Like, I was lucky enough; I'd been in so many fights. I did a bit of boxing when I was a kid as well, so I've been hit in the face. But there were people in our squad that had never been touched, and they need to know what it's like, because once you've been hit once, you know how to cope with it. But
exactly.
I'll jump in as well. So it's not about being violent. It's about being resilient. So this is not about us going, I've been in fights, I've beaten people up. It's not that. It's saying that you're the one who can tolerate the hardship. You can take that hit, you can do that, and then you can still protect the community. You're still the one who can stand up for those who can't take that hit. So
100%.
And the hits can not just be physical. My God, the amount of abuse and stuff that we got, you just got to be able to go, that was pretty funny. Like, that was a good one. and roll with it. You can't be offended by the way, like, that's a privilege given to others, not to police. And you've just got to be able to roll with that. You've got to go, as you know, as all of us know, that your job's not to be offended. Your job's to keep moving and get shit done and protect those who need protecting and hold those to account who need to be held to account. And that takes wherewithal. And that wherewithal is built up through hardship. So I think you're 100% right there. But I think if we move along from that college, because obviously you've done the army, you've gone through training. Mate, you headed to Alice Springs. That's an interesting place. Tell us about
that. It's definitely different. We got our preferences put in, and I put in for Alice Springs because at the time it was just the most was going on. It seemed to be obviously there's very busy stations everywhere in the NT, but at the time, like, Alice was like standing out as the busy station. The most was going on, and I figured I just wanted to get down there to learn as much as I could about the job as quick as I could, because I knew that obviously training, the academy is the academy, but the streets is where you're going to start learning your craft. And the more experience you get, the quicker you're going to be able to learn. So I remember I applied, I put it as my preference, and I got it. Again, I can't remember numbers, but maybe 8 of us got sent down. And I just remember that drive, 15, because Darwin is very similar to Townsville. It's a similar vibe. It's hot, it's muggy. You're on the beach, but you can't really take advantage of it. So it was kind of normal to me. But driving that 15 hours south, I just remember, like, nearly every hour just looking out in the desert going, like, what am I doing? Like, where have I come from? Because, I lived in Canberra, Townsville. Basically, that was it, Canberra and Townsville. Some training elsewhere, a bit of time in Afghan, but the desert was something else. So I got down to Alice. I don't remember, like, we were staying in a hotel. We got put up in a hotel for a couple of days before, probably Lassiter's or Doubletree, before we got in our actual keys to our houses or whatever the accommodation was given to us for longer term. And my first couple of days there, I just remember I was more comfortable in Afghanistan for the first few weeks than I was in Alice Springs. Just like the culture shock. And when I say that, I don't mean because everyone's going to talk about it, but I mean the culture shock. Everywhere has a subculture. And the Alice Springs, the subculture of that city was such a shock to me compared to everywhere else I'd been, that I was more comfortable in Afghan. It's just as you know, it's just a strange, wild place. Like, there is drunken violence just sprawling on the street near daily. Yeah. And it's just it's a normal, common occurrence. And people aren't used to it. You guys would have the same. I got mates who have got kids obviously in the NT. And when they take the young kids on holidays interstate and they're walking through the shopping malls, and the kids are confused because no one's yelling or spitting or fighting. And their parents are like, well, this is normal actually here. Back in the NT, that's not normal, but it becomes normalized. So yeah, it was definitely a shock. It's a little town, 30,000 people. So it's a little town already, little CBD, well, if you can call it a CBD, little central district. But yeah, it was definitely a culture shock. You get very used to it, but again, then that's when it becomes normalized.
Mate, it's interesting you said that you found Afghan a little bit more, I don't know, a little bit more normal, or you weren't as nervous there. I've had a conversation with quite a few veterans who became coppers, and I'll never forget one that I had with a bloke, and he'd been in special forces overseas and was an NT copper. You'd know him. We won't mention him here, but um, I said, so we were having a conversation on the business, and I've said this on the podcast before. He's going, so we're going, yeah, you must have seen some stuff. You guys did some wild, hectic shit over there, and he's like, oh yeah, no, we did. I said, what was the most fearful? And he went, oh yeah, no, I know the most scared I've ever been in my life. And we're like, oh yeah, tell us about that. And he goes, yep, it was me and such, who we go, it's an NT copper. You go, yep, we're in Port Keats, so what air? And he goes, we were completely surrounded by about 100 people. They've all got machetes. Said, I had my Glock. I think we had an AR-15 that would have been state of the art in about 1980. And it was us. And we didn't have enough bullets for the threat that was coming at us. And he's just gone, mate, it was a show. He said, overseas. And we said, yeah, but surely overseas, you know. He said, yeah, overseas we had US air support. We had bloody helicopters. We were surrounded by commandos. It was like, mate, we were sweet over there. So, yeah,
I think I've heard this same story. So it makes sense because in Afghan, as different as the culture is, and there's some areas that are completely opposite to our culture, but there are rules. There are rules, and it's like nearly written down rules that you know what the goal is, even though you don't agree with it, even though there's violence, even though there's people attempting to kill you and stuff like that. There are rules, and so it's easier to understand. Whereas in Alice, there's like nearly 3 separate things going on. There's like the obviously the legislation, the Crown legislation, which is what's obviously in the NT, they call it the white man's law, and then you have the Indigenous culture, and then a third, like a bastardization of that culture, and they're all overlaid, and they're not working in sync, and there's no one clear pathway. So I think that's what really makes it such a harder place to understand in that subculture domain. And again, when I say the subculture, I don't mean the Indigenous culture. I mean the culture of the place, which includes everyone that lives there. So I think that's what makes it so difficult.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So it's those things. I definitely remember that as well. It was you're treading between a few different worlds, and as a result, you've got to play by all three. But at the end of the day,
100%,
with the police, with the elected officials, it's a first world country. It's a democracy. We run under the rule of law. It's everyone gets their say in that rule of law. But the fact was, it was brutally wild, and made it. Yeah, God, we could talk about Alice for 3 weeks.
100%, 100%.
And we did a whole episode on Alice Springs, and that just created more questions than answers. So
yeah,
Alice is. Schultz didn't have the pleasure of serving there as a police officer, but he certainly came down.
No. Well, I definitely drank there enough. But yeah, one of the things, actually, you just mentioned it there, and thinking about, like you said, you've got the blackfella law, you've got the white man law, and then you got something in between. And
yeah,
I remember there were times, even in my job, where they wanted to, the blackfellas wanted to take care of it culturally. You're going, well, it's against policy and procedure, but you kind of had to make your own rules to allow that to happen, because if you actually went the white man way, it will keep on continuing for the next years, all that sort of thing. So you had to improvise a lot.
100%.
So that's one thing. It was very tricky. You got to negotiate your way through. I mean, yeah, that's obviously Alice is like that as well, like everyone.
Yeah, it's strange. Alice is probably less like it than obviously out in the communities, but I think there's like a flow-on effect. Just that just kind of makes it strange because there's expectations that aren't consistent.
Yep.
But yeah, apart from that, as you guys were talking about before, it's just a wild place. Like I've told the guys you can start day shift at 7 a.m. and you can be in a fight before 7:30 before you've had your morning coffee. You know, because
And don't get me wrong, you didn't start it.
exactly.
Like,
You know,
up to 12, you know,
someone takes a dump out the front of the police station and throws rocks at you.
Yeah. Simple, eh? It's not difficult.
That's how you know you're ready for a fight.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting day today, lads. So it's just that. That's just so true. So look, obviously, we were at Alice at the same time, but I was in the colonial investigation unit at that stage, so I didn't know you. Like, you get to know you guys on your patrol group. In the scheme of the Northern Territory Police Force, Alice Springs is quite a large station. There's a lot of police there. I think 200 police in Alice Springs. So you're familiar with faces, but you don't necessarily work with everybody. So I know that you said that you remember me. It's not personal, but I can't remember you because there was lots and lots of new recruits coming through. But what was that? Like, you mentioned there was a couple of jobs
100%.
where
Well, I was listening to you guys the other day, and that's what rang the bell because I know that there was 2 jobs that it rang a bell for completely. And again, because I was a new guy, I was a bit more curious about everything, and everything was new to me. But so there was a job where you rocked up, and it was a hanging, and the reason that it I guess was stood out in my mind was that the person had already gone into rigor mortis while they were hanging, so it just made it a bit I don't know, different than usual because I guess it was just the timing that we got there. And it was down by the Todd River, and then I remember you arriving, and like I didn't know who you were, but everyone started just saying that you were the coronial detective, and I had no idea what that was. So that's where it piqued my interest. So that's where I remember you initially. But again, for you, that wouldn't have piqued your memory at all. The second time was the 2 German tourists who'd gone missing out in the gorge, and it took us a few days to find them. And by the time we did find them, that was when the obviously I was fairly used to dead bodies by this point, but they're generally more fresh. I think you remember that job as well. That by that point they'd been out in the heat and the sun for days and days, and they were bloated and nearly like liquefied. So I was putting those bodies in the body bag because I was the young new guy, and I remember you from that job.
Yeah, sorry about that. That probably
I remember you from that job not putting the body in the body bags, but that's fine. That wasn't my job.
No, so my job there was I actually received the bodies at the end. So the helicopter brought them back into the airport, and we went from there. But I remember that well because I didn't have a lot to do with the search and rescue, but I know that affected a lot of people. It especially affected a very, very respected watch commander down there. He was I have a lot of time for him, the bloke who was involved there.
Yeah.
And that touched me a bit because he's tough as old boots. He was ex-South Australia. He had about 35, 40 years in the job. Just a brilliant bloke. And I was involved in the autopsies with those jobs, but and they were nature takes its course. We won't try and terrify everybody, but picture 46 degrees and exposed to that for days. So
100%. And they just taken a wrong turn with not enough water, and they just got turned around, and that's that.
Yeah. So Zach, I mean, obviously you take the cake for the biggest shit magnet here. However, we'll move along. And something happened fairly early in your career that ended up getting the Australian Bravery Medal. Do you want to take us through that?
Oh, yeah, that was so I got down to Alice at the start of December, but I didn't have a shift for a while. So all the boys and girls that I came down with, they started working, and you want to get on shift. You want to like have your first shift, get it done. But just because how the roster worked, I didn't actually get a shift for a couple of weeks. So my first shift was actually a overtime shift that I'd put my hand up for. And I ended up just sitting on a crime scene all day. So that was my first shift. But within that week, the first week after that is when, so in Alice that year, apparently there's this, this flood every 50 years, or generally around every 50 years in the Central Desert. And this just 2016 just happened to be that year. So all of December had been raining heavily. So all the dry riverbeds had started to flow. On that shift, it was a regular day shift. I was with my patrol group. I think it was around about 3 p.m. when we got the call, and the call was disjointed because out at the Hugh River where the incident occurred, there was no reception. So someone had driven back towards town to call it in. Basically, what had occurred is that 2 tourists from Hong Kong and Taiwan had attempted to drive through a causeway out at Hugh River. The causeway is about 100 metres wide, raised about 2.5 metres. There's cars stopped on either side of the causeway because they know that they shouldn't go through. But this lad decided he was going to try get through with his rental car. He got about halfway across the causeway before the river swept him off and swept his car about 200 metres downstream before it got hit up against a tree and submerged completely. So what happened was his missus had actually punched out the back windscreen, broken her hand doing so, and she couldn't swim. So she used the boot divider as a sort of flotation device. And she ended up, and we'll find out this later, but she ended up getting swept about 7 k's downstream. Yeah, on the boot divider until she reached the point where I guess the current pushed her against the riverbed. The guy had climbed out of the car. He'd managed to grab hold of the tree that the car was pushed up against, and he just climbed a bit over the tree. So we get this call about this car being swept downstream. It's about 40 minutes from Alice. We head out there, me and my partner on that day, and I think there was three of the units that went out there and the Sarge. And by the time we got out there, so we'd driven out and SES had left about 10 minutes behind us. But as we were driving out, the rivers were still rising. So SES actually got blocked and they couldn't come out with us. So it was just us out there and we didn't have any rescue gear. By the time we got out there, we had no comms and we couldn't get comms back because the rivers had already risen. We got out there, we could see the lad in a tree he was probably about 30 metres in from the riverbank and about 20 metres in from the riverbank. There was a little sandbank there closer to him. The woman was nowhere to be seen, and me looking at that river, I thought, because someone had kind of said that the guy couldn't speak English, but somehow someone from the crowd had kind of said that she couldn't swim. So, and looking at the river, I just thought she was 100% dead. There was no way. It was that rough that I was like, there's no way she survived. It would be hard for anyone to survive in that river. So my Sarge on that day, she sent a few of the guys walking, searching down the Alice side of the river for her, and she was kind of very worried about the woman. But I remember talking to her and I was like, I don't think the woman could survive at all. So I think we should focus on the guy because he's one that we can save. But the woman's kind of like in my mind that she was already dead. So, and she'd had the guys searching down the Alice side of the river. So myself, the Sarge, and a civilian called Michael Priestley, who was nearby and was blocked off, and he had some rope in his car. He came down as well. I tested the water, and it was just the current was just way too strong. So if we went in clothes, I knew for sure we'd get pulled under. So we all stripped down to our undies. We pushed upstream fairly far, and we started wading into the water until the current took us. So that as we swam across, the current would push us down to that sandbank. All 3 of us got to the sandbank, and I was kind of the freshest one there. We then threw the rope to the lad. He tied it around himself, and I could tell in his face kind of thing. You know, you can just tell sometimes what they're thinking. I could tell in his face that the situation that he thought that he basically just killed his missus because she was nowhere to be seen, obviously. He thought he'd killed his missus. He's now spent probably, by the time we got out there, probably an hour and a half in this tree. So he's exhausted, having some serious internal thoughts going on about what he's done. And I could see that he kind of nearly just wanted to let go of that tree and let it take him. But we convinced him to tie the rope around himself. And it got to the point that we actually had to pull him off the tree. And we'd gone down to the end of the sandbank furthest away from him to let the current assist us pulling towards him. When he got we pulled him to the sandbank, and he was exhausted. He was busted up, couldn't speak English, but he was safe. And my Sarge at that point we could see something downstream, a bit of pink, but it turned out just to be luggage, but it could have been the girl. So she really wanted one of us to get to she needed someone to search on the Hermansberg side of the river, which was probably another about 70 meters away, maybe 60, 70 meters. And I was the freshest one from the first swim, so I told her that I was confident swimming to the other side. And she was only happy for me to go if I was completely confident. She would obviously never tell me to do it. She'd never tell anyone to do it, but I convinced her I was confident, and she was happy. So I swam to the other side of the river, which was it was a trek. It was hard, but I got there in the end. I remember looking back at my sergeant, she was just clapping. She was just happy because obviously it was probably a big risk for her. Maybe the risk is that she's lost a weak, fresh recruit on a mission down that river. But we made the decision. It worked out in the end. So we got to and I was confident in doing it. So I got to the other side of the river. I think it was about 3:34, maybe 4, because I knew that I had about 2 hours of light left, and I knew that I could not cross that river in dark. So I walked down the little bit of side of the river and saw that what we were looking at, that pink thing, was just luggage. So we left that. So I figured that I would walk and search down the river for about an hour, and then I'd have to return back to this point to try and cross it just before the sun went down. So that was basically my plan. And I figured that if the girl had gotten to my side of the river, she would go inland a little bit and start walking up. But I'd figured she'd also likely have her shoes knocked off, and I was barefoot as well. So I walked inland a little bit, but the rocks and the bindies over there on that side, the bindies were the biggest things I've ever seen. And they were stabbing right through my feet. I'm a bitch. She's a lot tougher than me, but I made the decision that if I couldn't walk down that stream and down the land, she probably couldn't either. So I pushed back into the river. I started swimming down the river and diving under trees where there was root systems in place to potentially, because there's a body under the river. So it's basically swimming down and going on shore when I could. But about after an hour and 5 Ks of trekking, I was yelling out her name randomly and I hear something yell back. I look in and downstream the river had forked and I see her. Her name was Cherry and she was, again, barefoot. She was about 100 meters into the river where it forked, and she was like yelling it back to me. She looked pretty busted up, and obviously she didn't know that I was a cop. I'm just a dude in my undies. So she was weirded out. So I saw her, and I figured in my head that because the river had forked and potentially forked previously, that if I'd gotten back to the other side of the river, I wouldn't be able to get to her anyway. And it was just us, so I didn't know it. Like, we didn't have any resources, so I didn't want to lose sight of her. I didn't want her to go walk about and get lost and be dehydrated and make a bad decision. So I really wanted to get to her because I figured that was the best option. So I pushed back up the river upstream because I knew I was going to try and swim across to her, and I knew the stream was going to push me way down. So I pushed a couple hundred meters up, and I started getting into the river, and she was screaming at me not to do it because she knew it was a bad idea. But I started swimming, and my goal was I would swim from, obviously I'd been pushed downstream, and I'd aim for a tree, and I'd slowly swim across the river, get pushed up against a tree, have a rest, and then keep going to the next one. At some point, I got to it took me a little while, but I got to the middle of the river and I got stuck up against a real big tree. And that's when the point was that I figured that I'd like bitten off more than I can chew. So I pushed up against this tree, my back's to the tree, and the current's just hitting me in the chest. And I couldn't really move. Like the current was too strong. But I was like, I've done myself here. But I figured if I had done myself, I may as well do it trying than just sitting against a tree giving up. So I slowly kind of inched myself around the side of the tree, knowing that at some point the current's just going to take over and it's going to start tumbling me. But I was ready for it. So when it started tumbling me, I just figured I'm going to get tumbled, but I'm going to try and still move in the right direction. And eventually, I started getting scraped over these rocks. So I knew that was a good sign because I'm getting close to the edge. And I eventually pull myself over the rocks and get to the little fork, the sandbank and the fork of the river. And I just come up laughing because I just I thought I was about to die. And I just come out laughing because that was my response, I guess. And now this poor girl sees a crazy guy in his undies laughing. So she's wigging out, the poor thing. But then I tell her, I have thought about how crazy I must look. So I tell her, hey, I'm a cop and your partner's safe. And as soon as she heard the words that her partner was safe, she was laughing as well. And she was stoked. She kind of hugged me, She was happy. She could speak English. Again, she was tough as her hand she'd broken her hand punching out the back windscreen. Her feet were cut up from walking up the thing. She'd already walked 2Ks, but she couldn't swim. So we pushed down the other side of the river, the other fork, where it was a bit gentler. And we had to cross. So I just told her to jump on my back and like close her eyes and like not choke me out, and I'll swim her across. So did that, got to the other side, and then I offered to carry her up because she was only tiny, but she was tough enough, and me and her just walked up the next 5Ks and chatted and got up to the Sarge. By that point, the lad had been taken away. My sergeant, Michael Priestley, I think they just had to basically Baywatch him across. They tried a couple of things, but they just had to go either side of him and swim him across from the sandbank. So they did amazing as well. They saved his life. And yeah, we got up there and like it was happy days, finally got up to my crew, patrol group. No one expected us to have found her. And yeah, it was happy days. It took a couple of hours, and there happened to be a journo that was, I guess, trying to cross the river. So that's where the photos and stuff came from. That's where the story came from. And then, yeah, back to the police station. We had to get a flatbed truck out. Oh, actually, when we got up there, a chopper came in, the SES chopper. So all the boys got out in their clean uniforms, and ready to do a job. And I think they were upset because we'd stolen the job from them. And then she had to get on the chopper. So she got back to Alice first. Her partner was stuck out again. The rivers had risen, so he couldn't get back for a while. But we ended up getting a flatbed out. One of the boys brought a flatbed out. I don't know where he got it from because it was one of the sergeants driving it. But he brought out a flatbed to ferry the cop cars across and got us back to work, maybe about 8 p.m. And yeah, that was that. Got in, had a weird little debrief from one of the superintendents that was kind of upset already, and then knocked off and back to work the next day at 7 a.m.
And meanwhile, no one would know who you are. You're this new recruit. Well, who the bloody hell's this?
Yeah, 100%. It was a good outcome because I guess it's like you build a bit of reputation early rather than taking a bit of time and having actually to prove yourself that you're good at your job.
Yeah, hell of a start.
Yeah. It gave me some brownie points amongst the crew, that's for sure. Gave me some flexibility to be shit with my pay sheets for my Sarge, and
it was all right. We can tolerate that. That's pretty good.
Yeah.
So obviously that's what, day 2. So day 2 of your career was that.
Yeah, it was early on. I was in that first week for sure.
Wow.
Yeah, so that's sort of set the tone.
Yeah.
And like obviously it was 3 years between then and the Kumanjai Walker affair. So just fill us in on what sort of happened through those years before that all occurred. And we'll talk about that.
Kind of like it did set the tone for sure initially, because the station at the time, the Alice Springs station, obviously there was the general duties were on level 1, the Ds were on level 2, and maybe the bosses on level 3. But obviously there's a separation between the Ds, and it took a long time to get to know the detectives a little bit. And they were good to go, but mainly my group, my crew at the time were the GDs on the ground floor. And they were amazing. They were like a real good culture, I found. Had your back, loved to do work. Like they were busy and they liked the activity. And they would try to do their job well. And the Ds were the same. The bosses already there. I think it's no secret my view on a lot of the bosses, and it came early on that with that after the river rescue in my, I guess then second week, that before muster each shift I was called up to the superintendent's office multiple times over the next week, and like in a way berated for the river, for the rescue. But at no point had anyone given us a real debrief and asked us what had gone on. So it was just strange. And again, I was already conditioned to being, yelled at and in trouble in the army and whatnot. So it was no big deal. But it was kind of just confusing for me. From up top, it was kind of a negative response. But the ground floor was happy as, back slaps all around. Not long after that. So I guess I got a reputation initially for, physicality, or being fit, being capable in that regard, which was good. It was like it's good to have a good reputation amongst the boys and girls. It wasn't long after that I actually got into the immediate response team in Alice, which was set up a long time beforehand. But at that point, some expressions of interest have come out, and I just put in, and basically was just upfront about my background and stuff like that. I was allowed to try out, and there was a trial period. I think it was a trial, really like a trial day, and then 2 weeks of training. This was in early 2017. A trial day, and then 2 weeks of training, and got into the IRT. So IRT at the time was a semi-tactical team set up in Alice to provide, I guess, that immediate response, because the territory response group was so far away up in Darwin. I think if their fastest possible time to get to Alice would be 4.5 hours if an incident occurred. So IRT, I think there was 12 of us plus a sarge or two. We would do whatever our jobs were normally. So obviously most of us were general duties. And then when a incident occurred, search and rescue, or a high risk offender, whatever came up, we would then step up from general duties. So then I guess that allowed me to get more experience again than usual in a short amount of time. And on top of that, in my initial few months, I saw a lot of the guys would get into their patrol group, and that would be kind of their safe space as well. There was 5 patrol groups and general duties in Alice at the time, and I made sure, because there was just so few numbers already, they were just struggling for manning at that point. So I bounced through each patrol group just to meet everyone, see the different styles of policing, and each patrol group did have a kind of different style, a different focuses and stuff like that. And I kind of met the whole station, or the majority of the station, very early on, which I think was a really good thing for me to do. One, because you don't become super, super comfortable, and you don't become that officer that goes, no, this is my patrol group. I can't go anywhere else. So it's putting yourself in that a bit more of an uncomfortable situation, learning, but also meeting everyone. So I really got to know a lot of the people in the station in my first, 6 months doing IRT, and just bouncing between each patrol group before I settled into a steady patrol group down there.
And that's so true too. I remember I was down there. I think it was PG5. So when I first got there in late 2015, so you do sort of hold in your PG. You do overtime with the other guys, but you get to know them, and you get to know. But yeah, you're right. You get comfortable with the way people operate. And it is
definitely.
Good. So no, I completely understand that. But IRT is an interesting thing, because I knew it was there. It had been going for a few years, or a while anyway, when I first heard about it. To me, it made sense. And if you talk to anyone in other jurisdictions, they go, of course there's an IRT. It's very formalised in places like Victoria. You've got the Critical Incident Response Team, ironically, CIRT. So you need that, especially in Alice. What you said was so true there about TRG is a long way away. You need a stopgap before
100%.
the big boys turn up. But given the operational activity that went on in Alice, it would not surprise me that out of all this, there becomes a permanent base of TRG in Alice Springs. I'm not sure. That's just something that it sort of made sense to me back then.
100%.
Even if they're part-time.
Yeah, I knew that our IRT Sarge at the time had put in multiple memos to, 1, increase our training, but 2, put in place a full-time IRT in Alice. Ideally, it would be a full-time TRG. We couldn't apply for that. So he applied for a full-time IRT. He even applied for a full-time sergeant of IRT. So at least there were 1 or 2 members that were full-time to increase that asset capability. Because you're right, I know a lot of the TRG boys would come down to Alice for general assistance, and they would be, when they're doing assisting GDs, they're realizing that the GDs in Alice, and now probably all over, are attending, because you are the first responder on scene, and the Ds in the traffic, anyone who's on the street down there in the NT or around Australia, the first responders are generally the boys and girls on the street, not the TAC team. So they're the ones arriving to the violent jobs first, the high risk jobs first, when it's not planned. And the TRG boys, I remember they were kind of shocked sometimes about how many violent high risk jobs the GDs were just attending in Alice Springs while I was there. And because it is so normal, it's where that complacency in a way comes in, because you are going to wild jobs with edged weapons, with murders or attempted murders often. It's just a violent place. I think that's spreading, unfortunately, in the wake of the coronial, or probably, in the wake of the coronial. I think the police have done their standard knee-jerk reaction, and they've disbanded the IRT completely. So now there's no capability in Alice Springs. I think they've swapped it with a pseudo. It's called a different name now, but they've set up another unit, but they've disbanded the IRT because of all the publicity. So unfortunately, it's gone the opposite way of what it probably should go.
Yeah,
and that sorry, you go, Schulte.
Yeah, mate. I remember they started a similar thing back in Catherine back in the day, and I was supposed to be part of that, but they didn't really kick it off. That it was one of the things where they had me trained up on the motorbike and all that sort of stuff as well, and they were going to train us in that sort of stuff. But I think that was the beginning of it, and then obviously put it down in Alice Springs. But one thing I wanted to ask you, one of my biggest things in the police is training officers. I know, especially in your day in Alice Springs, you were pretty much thrown with anybody, who was on shift at the time. Did you have some good training officers, or did you just feel your way and get some good ones here and there?
No, I definitely had some amazing ones. You see, I think every patrol group basically had one grenade that no one wanted to work with. Like, you had to share the grenade. And if you're listening to this and you don't think your patrol group did, maybe you are the grenade. But I think every patrol group had the grenade, but that everyone got shared around with. And if you messed up, maybe your sarge gave you, you're going to get extra shifts with the grenade for a while. But we had some really, really good patrol senior guys. But again, I would look at them and be like, they're amazing when I was there. And I learned so much off them. But when I got to know them better, they could have been, 1 year into the job. They were so junior, but I looked at them and they'd had a year in Alice, which is probably worth, even in the NT, it's probably worth 2 or 3 or 4 years in interstate. So I looked at these guys and girls turns out they were very junior, but I learned so much off them. And there were some senior guys there as well that were amazing. So I got lucky in that way. But the manning was probably similar to elsewhere in the NT, where before because I was off the road at basically 3 years, but I reckon within that first, definitely within my second year in Alice, I was working one up often, and there was no, no restrictions on what jobs I would attend as a one-up officer, because of the manning issues. And I think, the guys from my squad that came down to Alice were working together in the cage within the first 6 months as well. So we did have some amazing senior, or in our mind, senior guys, but they were still very junior. But I imagine it's gotten a lot even worse than that now up there.
Mate, I used to have a saying, it was more Tennant Creek, but going to Tennant Creek or Alice Springs was like, people talk about being thrown in the deep end and just sink or swim. This wasn't that. It was thrown in the ocean with concrete boots on, sink or swim. It 100%. Was welcome to the jungle, and it's on. And all that training you just had, that's nice and that's really cool, but let's go. This is how it is. And this may sound ridiculous to people who haven't experienced it. I'm talking serious stuff. You imagine having 6 months training in the police force and you come out and all of a sudden the gun's not plastic anymore. It's real. The police vehicles are real. You're talking to real comms. You turn up to a job, there's blood everywhere, and next minute someone's trying to punch you in the head. It's like, oh, shit, job's on. Like, it's on. Job is on. It's like, yep, 100%. We're trying. I told you to listen. Time to roll, brother. It's on.
Yeah, and it's just that busy. I remember I was thinking of two examples of how busy it was. And I remember we had a posse cage down there, so point of sale intervention. So we had the cops on the bottle shop, And then every shift that there were cops on the bottle shop down there, you would try to have a cage to go around and be like their backup if something happened. And I remember being on a posse cage shift with my mate who was actually he was my battle buddy in Afghan, and he came and joined the NT cops. I remember because when you're not really attached to any jobs, but if an urgent job comes through, you're gonna go. You have to go to it because of priority of like safety priorities. So we were doing posse cage shift, and there's a hanging near us. We rock up to the hanging that comes in, and the woman has just managed to get herself off the couch, so she's hanging from a tree. So we jump out of the car, run to the girl. I pick her up to take her weight. My partner cuts her down. She's bawling her eyes out. Obviously, something's gone on in her life that's got to the point where she wants to take her life. You can't do nothing. She's just broken down on the ground. So all we can do is sit down with her by the tree, lean up against the tree, and then we just sit down next to her, be with her while she cries. Next unit comes. It's their job. We go like, shake hands, hi, bye, see you later. We're back onto our shift. Next minute, we're kicking in a door because a guy has had an issue with this other guy that's now dating his missus. So he's broken into the house with a knife, threatened to kill the victims hiding in the bathroom. Again, posse cage gets there first, kick in the front door. We've got a gun in the guy's face. We drop him to make sure he hasn't, and like secure him, clear the house to make sure old mate's all right. Old mate was still secure in the bathroom. And when I say drop him, we didn't shoot him. I mean, like, just drop him with my hands.
I'm glad you clarified.
Yeah, sorry. Just didn't. Sorry, boys. Didn't do a use of force for that one. Sorry, just. What was the use of force? We provided a distraction strike to the chest. And the defender must have lowered his body weight and took it in the chin, I believe. Something like that. So anyway, we do that, clear the house, and then make sure the victims are right. Again, as soon as the next units arrive, we're back on like, you just walk out, no paperwork, boom, and you carry on. So it gets to the point where you're dealing with those jobs, and that's fairly normal.
Yeah. And this is where I totally agree. And I'm going to jump forward a little bit here, obviously way forward, but we'll come right back. Throughout the Kumanjai Walker, which we'll get onto in a minute, throughout the investigations, the inquest, blah, 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 I heard a lot of people talking about high risk, and I went, yeah, that's pretty normal. That's 3 times a shift kind of shit. It's not 100%. Exactly. We're not talking, oh my God, this is the biggest job in Alice Springs all year. We're talking that wouldn't even rate a mention. Okay, correct. So we've got a pretty serious offender. A couple of guys got challenged with a tomahawk, so job's on. We just got to go and sort this guy out. I'm sorry, but I did that not just in Alice Springs. I did that all over the Northern Territory constantly, where we went into jobs that were high risk after the fact when it was time to criticise us. But at the time, we just dealt with it, and the use of force was what it was. I personally never even tasered anybody. I sprayed. God, I would have emptied a 44-gallon drum worth of pepper spray over my career, but I never tasered anyone, and I never shot anybody. I came pretty close, but I never shot anyone. But I'm telling you, it was hands-on every day, and not because we started it. It was we had to. It was we were protecting mostly other people. And when they talk about high risk, I go, okay. In hindsight, it turned out to be a show, but at the time, I wouldn't have considered that to be necessarily that high risk.
No, I agree with you completely. I think on paper you could do a threat matrix and anywhere else I could do it. It depends on a paper thing, perhaps. But as you said, we're doing that job multiple times a day. That same job occurs even on that show like Territory Cops that obviously has been sanitized, and whatever they show on TV has been accepted by the bosses. They're doing the same stuff. They're walking up to suspects and putting the phone next to their face that are potentially violent, that have potentially attacked people with the weapons. It does become such a normal. It's normalized, especially 3 days post axe incident. It's nearly like it becomes a non-event. You're like, oh, this guy attacked cops with an axe 3 days ago. Oh, okay. Well, how do we Three days ago, we could have done something differently. Today, we're walking into a community that's non-hostile. What can we do?
Yeah.
You know,
Exactly. And I think we've sort of formed a little segue there. So
yeah,
We have, but mate, I'm just going to cut in. Sorry, a little bit there. Just back in that thing about the bosses and talking about significant or high risk incidents. I remember I was at Bush, and you go to a well, I wouldn't call it a gathering. It's a massive fight between about 200 people, and sometimes you have 200 or 300 people. Most of the time, you've only got about probably 15 main people get involved in it. Anyway, I just went through and dealt with the job as we always do in the community. There's only two of us, and I write the job up. Anyway, the next day I get in trouble because I should have put it management significant. They said that's significant. I said, mate, that happens every night in Ramangini. It's just whether you fucking get called to it or not.
Yeah.
And this is where we need to really put the territory context in for anyone who's listening from interstate. What is considered an enormous newsworthy job all over the country, we're not exaggerating. There's three of us here. We haven't pre-planned this conversation, as you know. The 200 cops don't edit much.
No.
So we haven't pre-prepped you or anything. We literally logged in 5 minutes before we started recording, and you are saying the same thing we're saying all the time.
Yeah.
The territory is a show. There it is. The stuff that goes on is just incredible. I remember my first, and I've mentioned this before, Lajamanu, where same thing, 150 people each side fighting with weapons. Well, I'm sorry, that would have taken an infantry battalion to surround and actually deal with if you dealt with it as a high-risk situation. You apply a little bit of cultural context to it and experience. I was shitting broken glass when I saw that job, and I walked up to that as a, 2-month Connie or whatever I was. And my offside, I went, nah, she's right, mate. You take that side, I'll take that side. It's like, what? What do you mean take? So you've got to give it the territory context. And this is what was, high risk. No, he should have been very high risk. TRG should have been called in. No problem. You need a battalion of TRG, and they're going to every job.
Because they're going to have to go to every job by this point.
Yeah.
Yeah. They're going to have to, if every job was judged the same, then good Lord, they're going to have to go there. Every job. If we had to cordon a house every time we're going to arrest a potentially violent offender who's used weapons, we would be cordoning every single house before an arrest.
Yep.
Nearly exactly in the NT. So I agree completely. They were I think they just picked things on this job. They went down the path that they went down. And it wasn't really real. The judgments that were made. They probably wouldn't overlay those judgments to different jobs.
No, and it's like I would say apply the same scrutiny to lots of jobs. They're all written there. They're written in Promise and now Serpro. And you can go, well, hang on, that was potentially high risk, but it got resolved peacefully. And look at the members who attended, and they've done 1,000, and no exaggeration, over a 3-4 year period, they've done 1,000 of the same level of high risk jobs. Yeah, and it got resolved. It was resolved.
It's probably, of course. I was talking to a Canadian police officer who he's still in, but he does a lot of study on this at the areas. And now his name is Mark Bouchard, and he is very up to date with all this kind of stuff. And they're talking about like safety priorities and stuff like that. But it's basically a framework where it's a way that you can do what we're talking about, where every job is therefore fairly judged the same. So the safety priorities would be, the first safety priority is basically a civilian or a law enforcement officer whose life is an immediate risk of harm or death. If there's no one there, then you go boom. First is hostages, second civilian, third is law enforcement, fourth is suspect or subject. And that's like the safety priority list. And if everyone agrees that should be the safety priority list, which I agree with, then you can start judging every single job by the same merit, because it's just easy. You go, what is this job? Who's in danger? Boom. What do we do? What's this job? Who is in danger? Boom. That's how we handle it. So, and that's what I think the case didn't do in the shooting case. They didn't decide, okay, well, if we think this job is high risk, let's go across the board so every job is fairly dealt with, but also tactically dealt with the same level. So we can do it all the same tactically deal with every job at the same level that's required, and then we can judge every job at the same. But I think what they do in the NT is what they do a lot of the places is they go, we're going to, if the job ends well, then all good. We're going to deal with it how we want to deal with it. And if it ends well, then it's all good. If it ends bad, then we're going to look for someone to blame. And it's often going to be the general duties, the scapegoat that we can find. So, yeah, I completely agree. And I think a lot of people internationally are starting to agree as well. And I think America are ahead of the game.
And I like what you're saying there, because I know, especially in Strikeforce Trident, and don't get me wrong, some of my favourite humans were TRG. They would roll out, and they were good, and they were gentle. This is what people don't realise. They were big, confident guys, and they would deal with stuff. You're right, brother. Come on, bro. You're right. Just chill, man. Let's roll this and that. When HR, high risk, kicked in, the show was on, job was on, and things were dealt with. But the second that the offender was no longer a threat, it was, come on, mate, get a drink of water in you. Come on, bro, come back here. Do you need medical attention? The ambos are here. Do you need this? Do you need that? It was all care, but it was a big hammer when it was needed. But it could also be a feather duster when it was needed as well. They were confident. They were armed. They had lots of different tactical options, which we didn't have. And I often said, well, hang on. So it doesn't meet you guys coming out. And this wasn't against the members. This was once again back to protocol. It was, okay, so no worries. I'll just take my guys in our plain clothes and our bloody unmarked cars, and we'll just go and get the guy. And what will be, will be. And if we shoot him, we shoot him. And I'm not saying we were out to shoot them. We were out to apprehend them. So
exactly.
But we also know that a lot of violence is going to come our way. And a lot of the time, violence and the attempt to escape custody came our way, and we had to deal with that as well. Had we put more resources on it, I always love the saying where, why'd they use 10 cops to do this? It's like, because that's a minimisation of the use of force.
100%.
We've used lots and lots of presence. We've put people around this. 5 people apprehending one person on the ground is actually far less violent than 1 or 2 people apprehending a person on the ground, because you need to physically overpower that person. 5 people can grab a limb and do it easily, and one person stand at the front and records the whole thing. You used to do it in City Safe all the time. People would get up off the floor, not even with a scratch. I've been in situations where me and my partner have had to physically flog on with someone who was trying to beat the shit out of us for 20 minutes. We're completely gassed out. Me and my partner are injured. We've got bark off everywhere. The offender or the defendant is injured because we've had to use a high-level use of force to get that person apprehended. More is less.
100%.
And that's what a lot of the society don't understand, and I would say a lot of the legal fraternity don't understand. But we're going down a rabbit hole, Zachary. Yeah, so we are going down a rabbit hole. And I think what we'll do is we'll move on from what we've spoken about there in the use of force, and we're going to move on to another episode next week, because obviously the incident that took place that the reason we're speaking about is yet to be spoken about. So, Zach, if you're happy, I think what we're going to do is we're going to end this one pretty well soon. Next week, everyone stay tuned. Sorry, that's a 2 Ordinary Cops cliffhanger for those not completely playing along. Next week, our intention is to go through the actual incident itself, just to get your point of view and get exactly what happened there. And then I think we need to give it justice. I think we need to move into the Supreme Court trial, because that is an extremely traumatic thing for anybody to go through. But also the fact that this was a death in custody, a death in police custody, the fact that a coronial inquest was always going to happen is required by law. So I think we also move on into a 4th episode where we talk about, or who knows how many episodes, and we talk about the coronial inquest. So I think that's the impression. So, Schultze, what's your thoughts?
Yeah, mate, definitely. Mate, I'll just, as probably people will well know, he's spoken on Zero Limits, and I listened to the 4-hour episode, which is outstanding. So if you get a chance, listen to it. But there's a couple of things. There's a couple of questions also that I want to touch on that just came up in that one that I hadn't heard yet. And also, it's going into basically police procedure and how it affects different people. And I think it's important that people are aware of what can go on behind the scenes. So that's something I just want to go into. I've got a couple of examples. And but otherwise, listen in next week. We're not finishing anytime soon. With Zach, he has got so much to add. There's so much information there, and look, I truly appreciate him coming on.
Absolutely, we appreciate it, mate. And we'll talk to you next week. Stay tuned. We're going to make a bit of a series out of this, so stay with us.
Exactly, it's going to get a whole lot better. All right, but we'll see you all next week.